Preface. Just suppose there were a magic method of stopping smoking which enables any smoker, including you, to quit immediately, permanently, without needing willpower, without suffering withdrawal symptoms, without putting on weight, without shock tactics, pills, patches, or other gimmicks. Let's further suppose that there is no initial period of feeling deprived or miserable. You immediately enjoy social occasions more. You feel more confident and better equipped to handle stress. You are better able to concentrate. You don't spend the rest of your life having to resist the occasional temptation to light a cigarette, and you not only find it easy to quit, but can actually enjoy the process from the moment you extinguish the last cigarette. If there were such a magical method, would you use it? Chances are you would. But of course you don't believe in magic. Neither do I. Nevertheless, the method I describe above does exist. I call it easyway. In fact, it isn't magic, it just seems that way. It certainly seemed that way to me when I first discovered it, and I know that many of the millions of ex-smokers who have successfully quit with the help of easyway also view it in that light. No doubt you still find my claims difficult to believe. Don't worry, I would regard you as somewhat naive if you just accepted them without proof. On the other hand, do not make the mistake of dismissing them because you believe they are grossly exaggerated. In all probability, you are only reading this book because of the recommendation of an ex-smoker who attended an Alan Carr's easyway clinic. Read this book or stop by using another Alan Carr product. It doesn't matter whether you receive the recommendation directly or via someone who loves you and is desperately worried that unless you quit, you won't be there to go on loving. How does easyway work? That is not easy to describe briefly. Smokers arrive at our clinics in differing states of panic, convinced that they won't succeed and believing that even if by some miracle they do manage to quit, they will first have to endure an indeterminable period of abject misery, that social occasions will never be quite so enjoyable, that they will be less able to concentrate and cope with stress, and that, although they might never smoke again, they will never be completely free, and that for the rest of their lives they will have occasional yearnings to smoke a cigarette and will have to resist the temptation. The majority of those smokers leave the clinics a few hours later already happy non-smokers. How do we achieve that miracle? You need to book an appointment at an Alan Carr's easyway clinic to find out. However, what I can say is that most smokers expect us to achieve that objective by telling them of the terrible health risks that they run, that smoking is a filthy, disgusting habit, that it costs them a fortune, and how stupid they are not to quit. No, we do not patronize them by telling them what they already know. These are the problems of being a smoker. They are not the problems of quitting. Smokers do not smoke for the reasons that they shouldn't smoke. In order to quit, it is necessary to remove the reasons that we do smoke. easyway addresses this problem. It removes the desire to smoke. Once the desire to smoke has been removed, the ex-smoker doesn't need to use willpower. The easyway method exists in the form of clinics, books, DVDs, audios, apps, video games, and webcasts. In each case, the method is the same. They are merely different vehicles to communicate it. Which vehicle should you use? It's a question of personal choice. Some people prefer reading books, others prefer watching DVDs. The clinics enjoy such a high success rate that we are able to give a money-back guarantee. The fee varies according to location, and if you are one of the 20% who requires more than one visit, you can attend 2 follow-ups without further charge. We never give up on any smoker, and if you fail to stop smoking once the program is completed, your fee will be refunded in full. On the basis of our money-back guarantee, the worldwide success rate at our clinics averages over 90%. Do not let any of the above detract from the value of this book. It is a complete course in itself, and millions of smokers have quit easily simply by reading it. If you are in doubt, why not telephone your nearest clinic for further guidance? A list of clinics appears at the back of the book. Warning: perhaps you are somewhat apprehensive about reading this book. Perhaps, like the majority of smokers, the mere thought of stopping fills you with panic, and although you have every intention of stopping one day, it is not today. If you are expecting me to inform you of the terrible health risks that smokers run, that smokers spend a small fortune during their smoking lives, that it is a filthy, disgusting habit, and that you are a stupid, spineless, weak-willed jellyfish, then I must disappoint you. Those tactics never helped me to quit, and if they were going to help you, you would already have quit. My method, which I shall refer to as easyway, doesn't work that way. Some of the things that I am about to say, you might find difficult to believe. However, by the time you've finished the book, you'll not only believe them, but wonder how you could ever have been brainwashed to believe otherwise. There is a common misapprehension that we choose to smoke. Smokers no more choose to smoke than drinkers choose to become alcoholics, or heroin takers choose to become junkies. It is true that we choose to light those first experimental cigarettes. I occasionally choose to go to the cinema, but I certainly wouldn't choose to spend my whole life there. Please reflect on your life. Did you ever make the positive decision that you wouldn't be able to enjoy a meal or a social occasion without smoking? or that you wouldn't be able to concentrate or handle stress without a cigarette? At what stage did you decide that you needed cigarettes, not just for social occasions, but that you needed to have them permanently with you? And felt insecure, even panic-stricken, without them? Like every other smoker, you have been lured into the most sinister and subtle trap that man and nature have combined to devise. There is not a parent on this planet, whether they be smoker or non-smoker, that likes the thought of their children smoking. This means that all smokers wish they had never started. Not surprising really, no one needs cigarettes to enjoy meals or cope with stress before they get hooked. At the same time, all smokers wish to continue to smoke. After all, no one forces us to light up, and whether they understand the reason or not, it's only smokers themselves who decide to light up. If there were a magic button that smokers could press to wake up the following morning as if they had never lit that first cigarette, the only smokers there would be tomorrow morning would be the youngsters who are still at the experimental stage. The only thing that prevents us from quitting is fear. Fear that we will have to survive an indeterminate period of misery, deprivation, and unsatisfied craving in order to be free. Fear that a meal or social occasion will never be quite as enjoyable without a cigarette. Fear that we'll never be able to concentrate, handle stress, or be as confident without our little crutch. Fear that our personality or character will change. But most of all, the fear that once a smoker, always a smoker, that we will never be completely free and spend the rest of our lives at odd times craving the occasional cigarette. If, as I did, you have already tried all the conventional ways to quit and been through the misery of what I describe as the willpower method of stopping, you will be profoundly influenced by these fears and may be convinced you can never get free. If you are apprehensive, panic-stricken, or feel that the time is not right for you to stop, then let me assure you that your apprehension or panic is caused by fear. That fear is not relieved by cigarettes but created by them. You didn't decide to fall into the nicotine trap, but like all traps, it is designed to ensure that you remain in it. Ask yourself, when you lit those first experimental cigarettes, did you decide to remain a smoker as long as you have? So when are you going to quit? Tomorrow? Next year? Stop kidding yourself. That way you'll remain trapped for life. Why else do you think all these other smokers don't quit before it kills them? This book was first published by Penguin in 1985 and has been a bestseller every year since then. We now have many years of feedback. As you will soon be reading, the feedback has revealed information that has exceeded my wildest aspirations of the effectiveness of my method. It has also revealed two aspects of easyway that have caused me concern. The second I will be covering later. The first arose from the letters that I have received. I give 3 typical examples. I didn't believe the claims you made and I apologize for doubting you. It was just as easy and enjoyable as you said it would be. I've given copies of your book to all my smoking friends and relatives, but I can't understand why they don't read it. I was given your book 8 years ago by an ex-smoking friend. I've just got around to reading it and can't tell you how great it is to be free. My only regret is that I wasted 8 years. I've just finished reading easyway. I know it has only been 4 days, but I feel so great. I know I'll never need to smoke again. I first started to read your book 5 years ago, got halfway through and panicked. I knew that if I went on reading I would have to stop. Wasn't I silly? No, that particular young lady wasn't silly. I've referred to a magic button. Alan Carr's easyway works just like that magic button. Let me make it quite clear, easyway isn't magic, but for me and the millions of ex-smokers who have found it so easy and enjoyable to quit, it seems like magic. This is the warning. We have a chicken and egg situation. Every smoker wants to quit and every smoker can find it easy and enjoyable to do so. It's only fear that prevents smokers from trying to quit. The greatest gain is to be free from that fear. But you won't be free from it until you complete the book. On the contrary, like the lady in the third example, that fear might increase as you read the book and this might prevent you from finishing it. You didn't decide to fall into the trap, but be clear in your mind, you won't escape from it unless you make a positive decision to do so. You might already be straining at the leash to quit. On the other hand, you might be apprehensive. Either way, please bear in mind, you have absolutely nothing to lose. If at the end of the book you decide that you want to carry on smoking, there is nothing to prevent you from doing so. You don't even have to cut down or stop smoking while you're reading the book, and remember, there's no shock treatment. On the contrary, I have only good news for you. Can you imagine how the Count of Monte Cristo felt when he finally escaped from that prison? That's how I felt when I escaped from the nicotine trap. That's how the millions of ex-smokers who have used my method feel. By the end of the book, that's how you will feel. Go for it. Introduction. I'm going to cure the world of smoking. I was talking to my wife. She thought that I had flipped. Understandable if you consider that she had watched me fail on numerous attempts to quit. The most recent had been 2 years previously. I'd actually survived 6 months of sheer purgatory before I finally succumbed and lit a cigarette. I'm not ashamed to admit that I cried like a baby. I was crying because I knew that I was condemned to be a smoker for life. I'd put so much effort into that attempt and suffered so much misery that I knew I would never have the strength to go through that ordeal again. I'm not a violent man, but if some patronizing non-smoker had been stupid enough at that moment to suggest to me that all smokers can find it easy to quit, immediately and permanently, I would not have been responsible for my actions. However, I'm convinced that any jury in the world, comprised of smokers only, would have pardoned me on the grounds of justifiable homicide. Perhaps you too find it impossible to believe that it can be easy for any smoker to quit. If so, I beg you not to cast this book into the rubbish bin. Please trust me, I assure you that even you can find it easy to quit. Anyway, there I was 2 years later, having just extinguished what I knew would be my final cigarette. Not only telling my wife that I was already a non-smoker, but that I was going to cure the rest of the world. I must admit that at the time I found her skepticism somewhat irritating. However, in no way did it diminish my feeling of exultation. I suppose that my exhilaration in knowing that I was already a happy non-smoker distorted my perspective somewhat. With the benefit of hindsight, I can sympathize with her attitude. I now understand why Joyce and my close friends and relatives thought I was a candidate for the funny farm. As I look back on my life, it seems that my whole existence has been a preparation for solving the smoking problem. Even those hateful years of training and practicing as a chartered accountant were invaluable in helping me to unravel the mysteries of the smoking trap. They say you can't fool all of the people all of the time, but I believe the tobacco companies have done just that for years. I also believe that I am the first to really understand the smoking trap. If I appear to be arrogant, let me hasten to add that it was no credit to me, just the circumstances of my life. The momentous day was the 15th of July 1983. I didn't escape from Kolitz, but I imagine those who did felt the same sense of relief and exhilaration as I did when I extinguished that final cigarette. I realized I had discovered something that every smoker was praying for: an easy way to stop smoking. After testing out the method on smoking friends and relatives, I gave up accountancy and became a full-time consultant, helping other smokers to get free. Another 2 years later, I wrote the first edition of this book. One of my failures, the man I describe in chapter 25, was the inspiration. He visited me twice, and we were both reduced to tears on each occasion. He was so agitated that I couldn't get him to relax enough to absorb what I was saying. I hoped that if I wrote it all down, he could read it in his own good time, as many times as he wanted, and this would help him to absorb the message. I was in no doubt that easyway would work just as effectively for other smokers as it had done for me. However, when I contemplated putting the method into book form, I was apprehensive. I did my own market research. The comments were not very encouraging. How can a book help me to quit? What I need is willpower. How can a book avoid the terrible withdrawal pangs? I also had my own doubts. Often at the clinics it became obvious that a client had misunderstood an important point that I was making. I was able to correct the situation, but how would a book be able to do that? I remembered well the times when I studied to qualify as an accountant, when I didn't understand or agree with a particular point in a book. The frustration because you couldn't ask the book to explain. I was also well aware, particularly in these days of television and videos, that many people are not accustomed to reading. Added to all these factors, I had one doubt that overrode all the rest. I wasn't a writer and was very conscious of my limitations in this respect. I was confident that I could sit down face to face with a smoker and convince that smoker how much more enjoyable social occasions will be, how he or she will be better able to concentrate and handle stress as a non-smoker, and just how easy and enjoyable the process of quitting can be. But could I transfer that facility to a book? Thankfully, the gods were kind to me. I've received tens of thousands of complimentary letters and emails containing comments such as, "It's the greatest book ever written. You are my guru. You are a genius. You should be knighted. You should be prime minister. You are a saint." I hope that I have not allowed such comments to go to my head. I'm fully aware that those comments were made not to compliment me on my literary skills, but in spite of my lack of them, they were made because whether your preference is to read a book or to attend a clinic, Alan Carr's easyway system works. Not only do we now have a worldwide network of Alan Carr's easyway clinics, but this has been a Penguin bestseller every year since its first publication. It even outsold Harry Potter recently in Norway, making it the #1 bestseller there of all books, fiction and non-fiction. It has sold over 9 million copies in over 50 countries and been translated into over 36 different languages. After approximately a year of running my stop smoking clinics, I thought I had learned everything that it was possible to learn about helping smokers to quit. Amazingly, over 20 years later, I learned something new practically every day. This fact caused me some concern when I was asked to review the first edition after 6 years of publication. I had a horror that I would have to amend or retract practically everything that I had written. I needn't have worried. The basic principles of easyway are as sound today as when I first discovered the method. The beautiful truth is, it is easy to stop that as a fact. My only difficulty is to convince every smoker of that fact. All of the knowledge that I have accumulated over 20 years is used to enable every smoker to see the light. At the clinics we try to achieve perfection. Every failure hurts us deeply because we know every smoker can find it easy to quit. When smokers fail, they tend to regard it as their failure. We regard it as our failure. We fail to convince those smokers just how easy and enjoyable it is to quit. I dedicated the first edition to the 16 to 20% of smokers that I had failed to cure. That failure rate was based on the money-back guarantee that we give at our clinics. The average current failure rate of our clinics worldwide is under 10%. That means a success rate of over 90%. Although I was aware that I had discovered something marvelous, I never in my wildest dreams expected to achieve such rates. You might well argue that if I genuinely believed that I would cure the world of smoking, I must have expected to achieve 100%. No, I never ever expected that. Snuff taking was the previous most popular form of nicotine addiction until it became antisocial and died out. However, there are still a few weirdos who continue to take snuff and, probably, there always will be. Amazingly, the Houses of Parliament are one of the last bastions of snuff taking. I suppose this is not so surprising when you think about it. Politicians are generally about 100 years behind the times, so there will always be a few weirdos who will continue to smoke. I certainly never expected to have to cure every smoker personally. What I thought would happen was that once I had explained the mysteries of the smoking trap and dispelled such illusions as smokers enjoy smoking, smokers choose to smoke, smoking relieves boredom and stress, smoking aids concentration and relaxation, smoking is a habit, it takes willpower to quit, once a smoker always a smoker, telling smokers that it kills them helps them to quit, substitutes, particularly nicotine replacement, help smokers to quit in particular. When I had dispelled the illusion that it is difficult to quit and that in fact you don't have to go through a transitional period of misery in order to do so, I naively thought that the rest of the world would also see the light and adopt my method. I thought my chief enemy would be the tobacco industry. Amazingly, my chief obstacles have in fact been the very institutions that I thought would be my greatest allies. The media, the government, organizations like Ash and Quit, and the established medical profession. You've probably seen the film Sister Kenny. In case you haven't, it is about the time when infantile paralysis or polio was the scourge of our children. I vividly remember that the word engendered the same fear in me as the word cancer does today. The effect of polio was to paralyze the legs and arms and distort the limbs. The established medical treatment was to put those limbs in irons and thus prevent the distortion. The result was paralysis for life. Sister Kenny believed the irons inhibited recovery and proved 1,000 times over that the muscles could be re-educated so that the child could walk again. However, Sister Kenny wasn't a doctor. She was merely a nurse. How dare she dabble in a province that was confined to qualified doctors? It didn't seem to matter that Sister Kenny had found the solution to the problem and had proved her solution to be effective. The children that were treated by Sister Kenny knew she was right. So did their parents. Yet the established medical profession not only refused to adopt her methods but actually prevented her from practicing. It took Sister Kenny 20 years before the medical profession would accept the obvious. I first saw that film years before I discovered easyway. The film was very interesting and no doubt there was an element of truth in it. However, it seemed equally obvious that Hollywood had used a large portion of poetic license. Sister Kenny couldn't possibly have discovered something that the combined knowledge of medical science had failed to discover. Surely the established medical specialists weren't the dinosaurs they were being portrayed as. How could it possibly have taken them 20 years to accept the facts that were staring them in the face? They say that fact is stranger than fiction. I apologize for accusing the makers of Sister Kenny for using poetic license. Even in this so-called enlightened age of modern communications, after more than 20 years, even having access to modern communications, I've failed to get my message across. Oh, I've proved my point. The only reason that you are reading this book is because another ex-smoker has recommended it to you. Remember, I don't have the massive financial power of institutions like the BMA, Ash or Quit. Like Sister Kenny, I'm a lone individual supported only by the wonderful people who have joined my cause and run my clinics around the world. Like her, I'm only famous because my system works. I'm already regarded as the #1 guru on helping smokers to quit. Like Sister Kenny, I've proved my point. But Sister Kenny proved her point. What good did that serve if the rest of the world was still adopting procedures which were the direct opposite of what they should be? The last sentences of this book are identical to the original manuscript. There is a wind of change in society. A snowball has started that I hope this book will help turn into an avalanche. From my remarks above, you might have drawn the conclusion that I am no respecter of the medical profession. Nothing could be further from the truth. One of my sons is a doctor and I know of no finer profession. Indeed, we receive more recommendations to our clinics from the medical profession than any other profession. And surprisingly, more of our clients come from the medical profession than any other single profession. In the early years, I was generally regarded by the medical profession as being somewhere between a charlatan and a quack. In August 1997, I had the great honor to be invited to lecture to the 10th World Conference on Tobacco or Health held in Beijing. I believe that I am the first non-qualified doctor to receive such an honor. The invitation itself was a measure of the progress that I had made. However, I might just as well have been lecturing to a brick wall, since the nicotine chewing gum and the patch have failed to cure the problem. Smokers themselves appear to have realized that you don't get cured from addiction to a drug by prescribing the same drug. It's equivalent to saying to a heroin addict, "Don't smoke heroin. Smoking is dangerous. Try injecting it into your veins," because the medical profession, the media, and charities like Ash and Quit haven't a clue about how to help smokers quit. They concentrate on telling smokers what they already know. It's unhealthy. It's filthy and disgusting. It's antisocial and expensive. It never seems to occur to them that smokers do not smoke for the reasons that they shouldn't smoke. The real problem is to remove the reasons that they do.